some rain. Ooh. Yeah, liquid sunshine. I know my yard's been looking a little brown. And that's only because I refuse to pay to water it. I figured if God wants it to be green, he'll send the rain. Yeah. Yeah. All right, this morning we're going to be starting in Luke chapter 15, verses 20 and 21. And it says, "And he arose and came to his father, but when he was yet a great way off, his father saw him and had compassion and ran and fell on his neck and kissed him. And the son said unto him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and in thy sight, and am no more worthy to be called thy son." We're going to be talking about the lost sheep, coin, and son this morning. So all of us at some point, we've had that moment where we're supposed to meet somebody, whether it's at a get-together or, or a public place, and you walk in and you look around and you're like, where are they at? And it's supposed to be like a gathering or something of a bunch of people, that are, so you're trying to look around, you're just like, where's that one familiar face that I know I can go talk to? All right, and we start feeling awkward, and we're like, okay, this is little kind of weird, because I really don't know a lot of these people, don't want to talk to a lot of these people. I'm looking for that one person that I was supposed to meet. And then you're trying to figure out, what do I need to do from here? And we feel awkward in those moments because nobody wants to feel rejected. We don't want to feel like an outcast. There was one time I had received tickets to a Ducks Unlimited party. It was like a fundraising event, and I had gotten a free ticket to it. And so I go there, and I didn't know anybody there. I had just moved over into the Mobile area and gotten the ticket. So I went, and I'm standing there just like, this is a blast. I just left. I'm like, I'm not dealing with this. So I left. But we don't want to feel that rejection. It makes us uncomfortable. But unfortunately at times in life it's unavoidable. And what makes it so harsh on us is that we feel excluded, because nobody wants that. It's one of our most basic desires is to feel included. We want to have that community. We want to have those friendships. And that's the way Jesus designed us. If he designed us, if he wanted us to be alone, he would have just let Adam be by himself in the garden. But no, we were designed to have friends. We're designed to have that community, the companionship of our friends. And so we don't want to feel excluded. And so what we realize, though, is that Jesus didn't exclude anybody. All right? He included everybody. And it doesn't matter race, gender, social status, even their spiritual status. Jesus included everybody. And he invited them just as they were. He didn't say, no, you have to go and commit 500 sacrifices and do this and this and this before you can come have dinner with me. No, he said, hey, let's go get dinner right now. Let's go. So he wanted everybody to feel equal and be a part of what he was doing and what he was teaching. However, the Pharisees, they didn't agree with that. And that's why a lot of people endear Jesus to the outsiders, and that's why it infuriated the religious insiders, is because Jesus was like, hey, just come as you are. Whereas the religious leaders and the Pharisees, they were like, you're unclean. You're not worthy to be in my presence. Whereas our master, our Savior is saying, I don't care who you are, where you come from, what you've just done. I want you in my presence, because when you're in my presence, that's when I can help change your life. But the Pharisees, they didn't do that. They deemed everybody else unclean. So unless you were one of them, they didn't want nothing to do with you. They wouldn't walk through the crowds and say, hey, let's go get dinner. Let's go get lunch. They were just like, be gone, peasant. They would just like look around and just be like, no, we're not dealing with that. And so that's why the outsiders really loved listening to Jesus. It's because he was just like, I don't care who you are. Just come to me. That's all I want is you just come to me. And the Gospels, they make it clear that the Pharisees and Jesus did not overlook this tension. Because in the first 2 verses of Luke, it shows that tax collectors and sinners loved to hear Jesus and be around him. And this assures us that they were permitted to be around Jesus. Now, what does that say about the Pharisees' attitude, right? Because they're human, and they're saying, I don't want to be around unclean people, but yet the King of Kings, the Lord of Lords is saying, come as you are. I want you in my presence. I don't care how dirty you are. I want you to be around me. So this assures us that they were permitted to be around him, and the expectation was that they would be included. It is why we see them come so often to Jesus throughout the Gospels. And the setting for Jesus' message in Luke 15 is vital to understanding why Jesus taught the 3 parables of the lost sheep, the lost coin, and the prodigal son in response to the Pharisees' criticism. He taught the parables because he knew those who are hungry to him or hungry to know him could relate, while those whose hearts were closed towards him would miss the meaning altogether. How many times have we had like a friend come up to us and they try to tell us a story and we're like, oh, dude, that's so awesome. But then that one person who always gets under your skin, they come over to you and you're just like, yeah, sure. Okay, that's cool. Right? That's the way why Jesus taught in parables. Because those that wanted to really hear what he had to say, they would grasp those understandings. But yet those that didn't care what he was going to say, they would just be like, oh, he's just being a storyteller, whatever. I'm not going to listen to him. And so, and Jesus knew that the Pharisees were prone to excluding people. That's why, so while the symbolism of these 3 beloved parables is powerful and interesting, we have to focus on the heart of the message. And God has a heart for all people. And the illustrations are different, and the applications may be unique, but in each story, Jesus loves the lost enough to find and to restore them. So as believers, we recognize Jesus as our ultimate example of how we should live. He alone sets the standard of acceptable behavior, and some say that our faith in God is worked out in human relationships. It's one thing to know in theory that we are to love others as he has loved us. However, the direct application and practice of that belief is not easy. How many of y'all we all have friends that we're just like, small doses. I can handle you in small doses. But then we have other friends that we're just like, dude, I could spend 24 hours a day, 7 days a week with, right? My wife, I will spend every day I can with her. But then I have some friends that I'm just like, I love you from a distance. So I know I'm supposed to love them. However, the application is the hard part. And that's because we are all human. We all have flesh. And so we may feel good about the way we treat people we like, but the true test comes in how we treat those we feel are unworthy of our best treatment. So I work part-time in retail, and I've had some customers where they come in and they're the nicest people to me. And so I'm all like, dude, I'll go out of my way. I will spend 30 minutes looking for a bottle of Tabasco sauce for them because they are being the nicest people to me. But then some people come in and they're just all like, hey, where's this at? And I'm all like, it's on aisle 5. You could go look for it yourself. Because I'm just like, I don't want to give them my best treatment. You're going to treat me like a jerk. My flesh says I'm going to treat you like a jerk. And so so we have to really get down to it. It's like, okay, am I really being like Christ when I'm not giving my best treatment to everybody? All right. And that is why the Pharisees could not accept what Jesus was doing by spending time with sinners. In their minds, those people were beneath them. And they didn't want to deal with that. So the Pharisees, they enforced the standard of their own creation of, if you're not to hear, you're not worthy of our presence. And it's easy, like when we sit there and read that, we could be like, dude, y'all are a bunch of jerks. Like, y'all, really? You're going to treat these people that are trying to get better, you're going to treat them like that? But then, I have the guy who's a jerk to me, I'm saying, yeah, it's on aisle 5. Like, we have to really examine ourselves and be like, am I really doing what Jesus said? Am I really loving others and treating them the way that God would treat them? And so we really have to be prayerful when we're looking and judging other people, because are we doing the same thing? So who do we give your best version of yourself to? Who gets the most consideration and preference? Is it people you like or are like you? Jesus was demonstrating through his behavior and teaching that God's standard of value in people does not discriminate. Spiritual status is not the determining factor for his love and mercy. Whether they are sinners does not even matter. God loves people, period. It doesn't say love your neighbor if they're X, Y, and Z. No, it just says love your neighbor. Love God, love your neighbor. Not love God, love your neighbor if they have the same hobbies as you, if they have the same, likes as you, if they have the same job as you. No, it's just love your neighbor. There's no conditions to that. And unfortunately, we as humans, we tend to put conditions on love because we're human, and it's, oh, you hurt me, so I'm not going to give you my love. That's not what God is saying. God says, it doesn't matter who they are, doesn't matter where they come from, what their likes are, whatever it is that you might not like about them, you still have to love them. Because I have a feeling God has a sense of humor, and if me and Brother Heiner, if I just can't stand the guy, I have a feeling God's going to put his mansion right next to mine in heaven. Because that's just how God's humor is, right? And so it's just like, so I better go ahead and get to loving him now. Which I love you, Brother Heiner. I don't want to have somebody next to me in heaven that I'm like, oh, really? Because then it's not going to be heaven, right? And so therefore we have to learn to love everybody here on earth, so that way when we do get to heaven, it will be heaven, because there's not going to be any strife between us, because we're all going to be there doing the same thing, that's casting our crowns down and worshiping Jesus at his feet. All right? So in the first parable, Jesus shared a shepherd left a flock of 99 saved sheep to find the one that was missing. Right away, we are challenged by the clear priority of one sheep that has left the safety of the field. Again, it's like, hold up. If I have $100 and I lose one, I'm not going to leave this 99 here unattended to go look for $1. 99 is worth a whole lot more than $1. But Jesus said, no, I'm going to leave these 99 to go find that one. Because he knew that, and he used this parable because shepherds knew that sheep, they're community animals. They're community-based creatures. One animal is not going to survive on it. One sheep is not going to survive on its own. They will easily become attacked. They will become a wolf's next meal. However, if you have a flock of them, if you have a herd of them, and they're all together, it's going to be hard for a wolf to come in and get that one. So therefore, the shepherd knew these 99 are going to protect each other in this for a brief moment of time, and I'm going to go and get that one so he will survive and he will last. And that's why we have to be like, okay, that's where we have to change our thinking. Again, I'm not going to leave $99 to go look for one. But Jesus says, no, you leave. I left the 99 to go find that one to bring him back home. And so this information provides understanding of why the shepherd would respond in such an extreme way. He knew that one was valuable to him. He knew that it didn't matter if it was 1, 2, 3. He had 100, and he wanted all 100 back with him. And so after he found it, he went and got all of his friends, and they celebrated. They celebrated that he found the one. We read later in the scriptures that, heaven rejoices when one sinner repents. We can't all just be like, okay, it's us 4 and no more. No, we have to go out and search for the one, so that way when they come in, heaven will rejoice for that one sinner that repents. Because he knows that when somebody repents, that they have a chance to make it to heaven. And so we have to go out and search for that one. It doesn't matter who it is. It doesn't matter what where they come from. That one is still valuable to Jesus, because he died on the cross for that one. He didn't die on the cross for just me. He didn't die on the cross for you, Sister Renee. He died on the cross for everyone. And so we have to constantly be searching and getting out and trying to find that one that God is trying to find and call home. And so then Jesus even kind of furthers this point when he starts talking about the lost coin. Jesus, this one's a little bit of a shorter parable, and the parable was the woman, she had 10 coins and she lost 1. Some scholars believe that her 10 coins amounted to her dowry. So she lit a lamp, she swept the house, she searched until she found that missing coin. Again, one would assume that 9 out of 10 is close enough. But the value of that one coin in her eyes was worth her best effort to find it. And when she did find it, she went door to door to invite her neighbors to rejoice with her that what she had lost was finally found. Jesus' parable certainly highlighted his love for the lost, but they were also an engraved invitation for us to join him in seeking the lost. Some people may be lost because they wandered away on their own, backsliders, and don't know how to find their way back, like the sheep. Others may just be lost even while they are still in the house, like the coin. Whether they are long gone or still around, if they are lost, it is Jesus' mission and should be ours to help find them. I've been at times where I'm just like, I could be sitting on a pew and I've just been like, I just sit there. I just sit in the back and I would just kind of be like, okay, great service. I wasn't lost because I was in the house. I wasn't gone. But spiritually, I was just at a point where I was just like, okay, like, why am I doing this? Like, what's the point of this? And I've known several people they come, they go through the motions because they know that's what they're supposed to do, and then they walk out and they go and live how they want. Then they come back in, they go through the motions, they go back out, live how they want, come back in, go through the motions, because they're inside. They're spiritually lost. They might not be physically lost because they keep coming to the house, but yet they're spiritually lost because they just they don't feel that love or that connection to somebody or to Jesus, because they just haven't really gotten a hold of that relationship with him. And so that's why it's so important that whenever we go, we should try to greet anybody and everybody that comes in these doors. Because you never know one person might be saying, if nobody says hi to me today, I am never coming back. And that's scary, that people can come in here, go through the motions, and still be spiritually lost. And then he finally ends up with the prodigal son. The parable of the prodigal son is the last and the longest of the 3 parables. The details seem to build a strong case against the wayward son. The young son wanted what would be his when his father died, but he wanted it before his father died, and it was as if he wished his father was already dead so he could have his inheritance. And I'll be honest, as a parent, nothing could be more hurtful than that. Than your own kid saying, hey, I want what's mine because I wish you were dead so I could have it and go do what I want with it. You know, there was one time I got onto Chase one time, and he was misbehaving at the house, which I know y'all are like, what? He misbehaves? They are my kids. So I am dealing with that. But I made him upset by telling him he couldn't do something, and it was getting on to him. And he had this little sign that he had made at an Alabama camp that he went with me to one time, and it had his name on it. Well, he was so upset at me, he got a crayon and wrote, Chad, no. And it was hung on, and he hung it on his door. Like, I couldn't go into his room. And I'm sitting there like, first off, little punk, who do you think you are? I'm the one that pays the bills. I'll go into whatever room I want. Secondly, that hurts. Like, I'm just trying to make you a better human, and you're telling me I can't go into your room now. Like, I was like, yeah, he wrote Chad, no. Like, not even like daddy, dad, no. He wrote my name. Like, Chad, no. And I'm like, dude, all I said was you couldn't have ice cream or something. Like, it was just like, I was like, ouch, that hurt. You know, and so, but it was just like, again, like, I couldn't imagine my son saying, hey, I want you dead so I could have all your money. Which, if that was my kids, y'all in for a rude awakening. Public school teacher, hey. But, so I'm pretty sure the dad was hurt. You know, and so the dad was like, fine, here you go. Here's your money. Deuces. Peace out. See you later. Hope you enjoy your life. And so eventually we all know that the son, he goes and he blows it, and he has all these friends while he has money. But as soon as he gets rid of it, where is he at? Sleeping with the pigs. You know, and he finally realizes the servants at my father's house have it better off than I do. I could go and be a servant, be a slave for my own father, and live a better life than I can out here sleeping with the pigs. So naturally, a lot of people would naturally side with the father without how ungrateful his son was. But Jesus continued to tell the story, and the young man's father was willing to forgive his son if he would just return. One day he did that. So after the famine, after sleeping with the pigs, and after his pride finally left, he walked many miles home to his father's house and to his father. And in a culture that valued dignity and decorum, the father ran to meet his prodigal son. He didn't just stand there and, I knew you'd be back. No, he ran to go meet his son. He ran to go meet his lost son because he knew that if he would just make it home, he could make everything right. The father did not respond as many would. There was no trial period of, okay, you can come home, but you have to do X, Y, and Z. You have to go get a job and save up this amount of money before you can come back and stay in my house. There was none of that. There was no reluctance on the father's part. Rather, the father ordered a celebration, unlike any other, and the son who was lost was restored as a son. Not a servant, but a son. He was restored back to where he originally came from. This measure of mercy assured his family and all the neighbors who might have wanted to have him punished for his blatant dishonor that his rightful place in the family had been fully restored. But there was another family member in that story that often gets overlooked, and it was the older son. Most of us would probably identify with him more than the wayward son. You know, another natural human desire is to be like, I want justice. I want what you deserve. You should get what you deserve. And I've seen a lot of bumper stickers lately on cars that say, "I hope you have the day you deserve." And I'm all like, makes you wonder. It makes you really wonder, like, okay, am I having the day that I deserve? Am I acting the way that God is told me to act, so that way I can give other people the grace and mercy that they need, just like I need? Or am I going to retaliate and respond to people a way that my flesh tells me to? And so we have to really understand what's our intention behind how we respond to people. Because, it would seem unfair that a child who had wronged a parent could be forgiven so freely. His brother had squandered what he had been given prematurely, and the older brother had been faithful. He had dutifully served his family. Such kindness to the undeserving would have naturally seemed to undermine the value of the older brother's love and loyalty. Here we see the power of Jesus' message that day. The parallels would have been painfully clear to the Pharisees. They would have seen themselves as the older brother who had not earned their father's praise. The Pharisees viewed sinners in the same way the older brother viewed his younger brother. How could they be so freely forgiven? That is because our God is a God of marvelous mercy, and he extends his covenant invitation to everyone, especially sinners. So like any master communicator, Jesus knew this was his mic drop moment. The conviction of his final parable set in because the teacher left the application with the audience. It would be one thing for Jesus to have followed the sting of his story with a pointed finger and judgment, but he did not. He let the parable speak for itself. In so doing, we as the audience are left to answer the questions we have, not just from the perspective of the older brother, but with the realization we are also the wayward son. While we may need to confront our tendency to demand justice as we see fit, this parable requires us to look in the mirror. We too have broken our Father's heart. We are the younger son at times, because we're all human. We all make mistakes. That's why Paul says, I die daily. We have to continually strive each and every day to get better and to live for God to the best of our abilities. And that's why I'm so thankful for God's mercy that it renews each and every day. That because I am flesh, I am a human, and I know I'm going to make a mistake. But then when I do make a mistake, it's an easy fix if we get rid of our pride. It's an easy fix. All I have to say is, God, I'm sorry. I was dumb. I was stupid. I shouldn't have done that. I'm sorry. Can you forgive me? We have to get rid of our pride in order to really get to that Father's heart. Just like the prodigal son had to get rid of his pride and say, I can live better at home as a servant than I can out here in the world. We have to examine ourselves to get to where God is calling us to be. We have to look in that mirror. But Jesus is calling us to be like him, like the Father. These parables are a clear call for us as believers to be more than recipients of God's love, but also to be extensions of God's love to others. Paul wrote to the church in Rome in Romans 15:7, wherefore receive one another as Christ also received us. We have to show mercy. We have to show grace to others if we want God to show grace and mercy to us. We have to forgive others if we want God to forgive us. We have to be able to, we call ourselves Christians. We have to be able to act and respond and try to think the best of our abilities of how would Jesus handle this situation. And that is by showing love to everybody. Because there is a lost coin, there is a lost sheep, there is a lost son out there. And you could be the key to getting them back into the presence of God. Amen. We have a little bit of a break. So use the restrooms as needed.